Go back into South Bend's history. 20 years, 50 years, 100 years, and what do you see? You see groups of people working to bring change to this city. They had different ideas of what that change should be. They didn't always agree. Yet, in every decade, there were groups of people for whom positive change was their life's work. This podcast, South Bend's Own Words, features the voices of people who helped make the city change. We'll share clips from the oral histories done by the Indiana University South Bend Civil Rights Heritage Center that tell a more complete history of the city. It's the story of many cultures, not just one. It's the story of South Bend. Near the end of World War II, at about 4 or 5 years old, Abdul Nur moved a short distance from Elkhart, Indiana, to South Bend. Despite the short trek, Abdul experienced a huge cultural shock. For the first time in his life, he was surrounded by children from multiple racial and cultural groups. He went on to experience multi-ethnic spaces throughout his time at Central High School and into the Air Force. As early as middle school, Abdul began a deep education into Islam that eventually led him, as an adult, to convert and take on the name Abdul Nur. These experiences led him to get arrested for civil disobediences in Nashville, Tennessee, fighting for justice during the height of the 1960s civil rights movement. With a degree from Indiana University South Bend, Abdul became involved in several activist groups here from the 1960s through the 1990s. In 2001, IU South Bend Civil Rights Heritage Center students Andrea Sheneman and David Healy sat down with Abdul Nur. They spoke about his early experiences in South Bend schools, his learning and conversion to Islam, and how they all informed his actions for justice.
So you were born and raised in South Bend?
No, I was born in Elkhart, Indiana, which is not very far from here.
But you lived around this area?
Yeah, I was born in Elkhart in 1939. I came here like when I was about 4 or 5 years old, somewhere there, about 1945. I remember aspects of World War II. I ended up at J.D. Oliver Junior High. And that was in the 40s and stuff like that. Now that's when I really had what you would call cultural shock, because we were in proximity to various other ethnic groups, like there were Hungarians and there were like Polish and we were around these industrial areas like Studebakers and Olivers and International Harvester, that from the time I started school at J.D. to the time that I graduated from junior high school, it was always like fighting and conflicts, and there was where I encountered my first really hostile teachers. There were no black teachers at J.D. Oliver Junior High either. But, Mr. Bush, he was kind of, my homeroom teacher, Homer Morris, him and I was fighting as a kid.
What were some of the things that they did to you?
Okay, Homer Morris, my homeroom teacher, Mr. Morris. Well, I used to be late to school. Mr. Morris didn't want me coming in his class late. I mean, he should have been glad I was coming at all, really. So ultimately, Mr. Morris, used to stick his finger in my chest and all that. And this happened over a period of years, and I was getting older, and I was getting a bit more, rambunctious or rebellious. And so Mr. Morris and I almost got fighting. He stuck his finger in my chest one time, and I said, I knocked his finger out. He said, "Oh, you hit me, huh?" I said, "No, but you're not going to stick your finger in my chest anymore." And so me and Mr. Morris were at war. He was a shop teacher too. We used to get paddled a lot. That's the way he was paddled.
But the white boys had never experienced it.
I never heard of any one of them ever having done it. Oh, Mr. Wade, the principal, Mr. Wade, got in a fight. Literally got into a battle with a black girl during a library period. And this girl's name was, we call her Sweet Sister. I forgot what her real name was. But evidently she was doing something. And the female library teacher called Mr. Wade. That's what they always call the principal. And the principal came and was talking to this girl. And evidently she wasn't talking right. And he actually grabbed her. And she was a good-sized girl. And, tall and stuff like that. And she actually began to resist Mr. Wade. And we were like, wow. She was fighting Mr. Wade back in. And it got real physical, but ultimately Mr. Wade overpowered her and took her away. But
she was expelled from school.
I don't know what happened to her. I don't really know. Well,
What about your high school? Where did you attend high school?
Okay, I went in junior high school to South Central.
Okay.
Which is during high school, but right. Went there in 1955.
How were race relations at Central?
Okay. Yeah, well, Central's course was all predominant white school. And I went to Central playing football. I went to Central, and I encountered that element that's around sports. Back then, they had the old type of helmets, and we kind of know how the helmets that they got, the white boys got, better than the helmets that we got. The shoes they got were better than the shoes that we got. I played freshman football, and I wasn't really big, and I got hurt during the last game of the season. And what happened was I hit this guy named Kenny Marple, biggest guy in the city, probably, freshman. And what I done was I knocked my ribs into my lung. Last play of the game, I went to a friend of mine, James Bogart's house, whose mother was always fond of me and kind of treated me like a son. And I usually came over there after a football game and ate with James, because she always invited me to eat. And this day I didn't eat. After this game, I didn't eat. And I just sat on the couch, and she noticed that something was wrong with me. I wasn't my usual self. And she kept asking me, what's wrong with you? What's wrong with you? I said, I got hurt in the game, And so finally I had to go home, and I walked from over there to the east side, from over where I live now to the east side. And I went home and got in bed. And the next morning I was to go to school. I couldn't move my body. I slithered out on the floor and got up on my knees and stuff and went to school. I went to school, and I had the head football coach, Bob Jones. Jones asked me, after the school session, said, what's wrong with you? You're not your usual self. And I said, well, I got hurt in the game last night against Kenny Marble and all of them. And he said, well, you go to the hospital. He sent me to the Memorial Hospital. And they took me and did an x-ray and stuff. And they found this big blood clot on my lung, from a rib had been knocked into my lung. And they were alarmed, and they started treating me immediately. Evidently it was life-threatening almost, right? And so when I went back to school, finally, after some time, getting treated and stuff, went back to school, Ross K. Stevenson, the one that gave us the equipment stuff, Ross K. Stevenson got me in the car with the rest of the coaches. Ross Stevenson, Ed Seuss, Lou Newball. When I was coming back to begin to play football again, got me in the car. And Ross started to say, oh, you boy, you went over our heads to the head coach, and you went to the hospital, and you caused us all these expenses and all this kind of stuff. And boy, you're not going to play football here, I just, even then, as a teenager, I said, no, there's no way that he would not only treat his son or another guy like that, but he wouldn't allow anybody else to treat his son or somebody that he knew like that. And that haunted me, and it still haunts me to this day.
They graduated what year?
1959.
So you joined the Army for like 3 years stint?
Yeah, I'm joining the Air Force.
The Air Force.
For 4 years, right?
That was right after Korea.
Yeah,
Just before the
that, okay. I went in 1959.
Did you see a lot of prejudice in the Air Force?
Yeah. You know what? That question really is, I not only did I see it, but I also resisted it, and I also did it like, uncompromisingly, and that always caused me problems. And I ended up getting court-martialed for insubordination, stuff like that. And so basically, I refused to work with those people that were treating me. Now I wasn't like that, and so they ended up court-martialing me.
Did you spend there for 3 years then?
I only spent just short of 3 years. Right? I got out in 62.
So you went to high school. You mentioned Tennessee State.
I went to military high school, but I went to Tennessee State. From South End in 1960, around 66.
Okay.
Yeah.
During the height of the Civil Rights Movement.
Right.
Then did you graduate from Tennessee State?
No, I didn't. I got arrested. Well, I went to Tennessee State, which is a hotbed for that kind of activity. And there were many civil disobediences around that time. I had several friends to get killed. And many of us were either killed or arrested. And I got arrested in 1968 in Nashville, Tennessee.
So that ended your college?
No, when I came out of prison, I came back to South End. I started to study in 1973 at IUSB.
Okay.
I graduated from that university.
How long?
Huh?
How long were you in prison?
I was in prison from 68 to 73.
And may I ask what the charge was?
The charge was assault with intent to murder a police officer.
That would happen in Tennessee State.
Yeah.
So you did you finish up at IUSB then?
Yes.
So you have a degree.
Mm-hmm.
And what is your degree?
Sociology major, psychology minor.
Congratulations.
Now, when did you become a Muslim?
Okay, let me just say it by saying this. I was influenced by Islam as a child. I mean, as a youngster, right? And so I started studying Muhammad speaks, like when I was like, I was still in junior high school. So I eventually became Muslim, involved myself deeper in Islam, like in 1976. And actually, so what that did was, 76, I actually changed my name. I went to the courthouse and you can put publication, you can have your name in the publication in the paper. There's a procedure that you go through to change your name. And then I left the country and went to Saudi Arabia, went to the Middle East for about 4 years. And I studied Islamic studies and stuff like that over there at University of Imam Muhammad bin Saud in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia.
So what did being a Muslim offer that Martin Luther King didn't?
Well, Martin Luther King's programs were always a bit too pacifist for most of us. On the auspices of turning the other cheek and stuff like that. Many of us said, no, not only is it the wrong policy, but it feeds right into the hands of the people who are tormenting us, and it just gives them, to beat us and brutalize us, and many of us are not going to stand for it.
How popular was the Muslim movement in South End?
It had been around. There had been like small remnants of pockets of Islamic type things. There was a small group of people, mostly out on the west side, the lower west side, what we call a lake, who, most of them were elderly too, who had been in the old Islamic movements, right? And so they came in with Elijah Muhammad, and they started to become more active, right? Our brother Spencer Jennings and a bunch of these people, right? And this was like in the 50s, actually, late 50s, mid to late 50s, that I began to become more directly involved in it. So I started selling newspapers, and I started, promoting Malcolm X and all of that. And other young blacks began to notice me.
The newspapers were about Malcolm X? Or?
The newspapers were part of the Muslim organization.
Okay.
It was called Muhammad Speaks.
Okay.
We called Muhammad Speaks newspaper, right?
Okay.
And Malcolm X was such a dynamic agent that when he came into Islam, it just exploded all over the United States, right? So it also exploded here in South Bend, Indiana, and I was one of the persons that started to promote Malcolm X early on. I got a big poster. I had a big poster. You've seen that poster, Malcolm X, the finger pointed out, right? I put this on my window because I was always plagued by bill collectors, and mostly white guys, right? I put this on my window in my door, and it kept a lot of people away, right? So by me talking about Malcolm X and selling Muhammad Speaks and all that, many young blacks began to become part of, identify with Islam. It was in the 50s, and also, like in the 60s. Around that time, I had a young black group called the Simba Wachanas who used to march up and down, the west side and all that with young blacks training them, right? Here in South Bend. and
What was the name of that group?
It was called the PADC, Positive Action and Development Committee. Reverend Willie Coates was a prominent minister around here. Ben Johnson became one of Jimmy Carter's aides. Then later he became one of Clinton's aides. He and Willie Coates started this group called the Positive Action and Development Committee, PADC. And they had these mostly all young guys training them and organizing. It was really impressive, actually.
That was right here in South Bend?
Right here in South Bend, Indiana, right.
Okay.
And
it started here?
Right.
Did it grow?
Yeah, it started here. I tell you what, it had a national connection. It was connected to, remember Amir Baraka, Leroy Jones? Leroy Jones had a national organization at that time. And Willie Coates was his national secretary from South Bend, and Ben Johnson. They were like the right hand men for Leroy Jones or Amir Baraka. And we took caravans from here to New York and had rallies with Amir Baraka and his organization from South Bend, Indiana.
How do you think the PADC changed South Bend? What did they do?
Okay. I'm certain that they brought like a militant nationalist or black consciousness that already existed, but they kind of like galvanized it and made it manifest in the form of these young kids and some kind of philosophy, some kind of concept, the way to train and rear young children, young boys.
I just guess we wanted to know a little bit about, I know you said you sold the newspapers. Was there anything else you did? Yes. Was there anything else you did to promote Black power
Black consciousness?
Yes. Was there anything else?
Well, okay, that was a good starting point. I did start to sell Muhammad Speaks, which was kind of like for avenue for that. From that, or before that, I sold a newspaper. They had a lot of black newspapers in it. I used to sell a paper called the Chicago Defender. And there have been a number of things I've done since then, but I became more politically involved. So what I did in 1984 or 5, something like that, I was the campaign manager for the Jesse Jackson for President campaign. We had a Rainbow Coalition. We got the first black woman, female, on the South Bend City Council. His name was Virginia Brayboy. Through our work, we got the first black woman on. At that time, we got 3 black people appointed or elected to posts in the city. Ms. Brayboy became the city council person from the 2nd District president. Carolyn Mays she got on the Portage Township Trustee Board, which we had no access to previously. As opposed to just being militant and stuff like that, I got involved in political activity, an organization that I'm involved in to this day. I could name a number of the organizations I've worked with, started, but I don't know how much detail you want to go into that. There was one organization I used to work with called the National People's Democratic Uhuru Movement, which was headed by Fred Hampton's wife, president that was Akua Nigeria, Deborah, Black Panther leader, Fred Hampton's wife. She was the head of that. And we had rallies here on the west side, South Bend.
Remember the year of the
National People's Democratic Movement was 1995.
Is there anything else about South Bend during the Civil Rights Movement that we didn't cover?
We had first the music and everything, and entertainment, right? We had, Temptations, we had, Marvin Gaye, we had, all this like music and stuff, right? All of those people early on used to come to South Bend, and as a result, with the hotels being segregated, they always stayed in and around our communities. So any of those people who became quite famous later on, we can say that we actually rubbed elbows with them. James Brown, we had access to, we talked to him like, Al Green, these are black musicians, entertainment, band leaders. They were all in, South Bend was a hotbed for that kind of activity. So they stayed in many times in our homes or ate in our homes as opposed to going to hotels and stuff outside the community.
Are there any other questions you think we should have asked?
Not so much a question, but I'd like to say that as regards my involvement in this, I'm still active just like I was basically back then. I guess it is costly. Some people say, since I've gone to college and all that, some people say, well, you should have a big house and a big car. You should be financially set and all. But my position on discrimination and the kind of stuff I do precludes me from being able to just become a part of that situation.
South Bend's Own Words was created by Kevin Tidmarsh and me, George Garner. This episode was produced by Donald Britton from the Ernestine M. Racklin School of the Arts at IU South Bend, and by me through the Civil Rights Heritage Center. Visit us and learn how IU South Bend students inspired the transformation of a once segregated South Bend swimming pool. We give guided tours and offer public events that show how the history of oppression echoes through the city today. See and hear more history, plan your visit, or share your thoughts about this episode, all at crhc.iusb.edu.